Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to another Nether Update Java Edition Snapshot video. This will cover snapshots 20W11A and 12A, which is the version we're in right now, and good news for folks who play on Minecraft Bedrock Edition because some of these features are available in the first Minecraft Bedrock Edition beta, which was released not too long ago. The beta sign-up process is a bit of a long and complicated one, so in the episode description for this video, I'm going to link to the Minecraft.net page that tells you how to get started with that. It does mean a couple of adjustments need to be made to your Bedrock installation on Windows 10, Xbox or Android. Unfortunately, iOS, PS4 and Switch players will have to wait until the full update comes out, as those platforms don't support beta versions being published. So, without further ado, let's explain what the heck this thing is here in the middle. First of all, folks, don't worry, you can ignore all of the stuff around the outside of here. I just made this for set dressing, but this right here, this block is the one that you want to focus on. This is a brand new Respawn Anchor that has been added to the game in Minecraft 20W12A, and it is, as forecast, a block that lets you set your spawn point in the Nether with a few conditions. You will notice that this light up kind of circular section of the texture here is fully lit right now, but if I place a fresh one, you'll notice that is dark. The idea is that this thing will respawn you in the Nether for a limited amount of charges, which right now at least is refilled using glowstone. Each time you right-click on this with a piece of glowstone, which presumably in survival mode would actually consume the glowstone, it fills up a quarter of this circle, and those are 4 charges which can be applied to this thing, so it will respawn you a total of 4 times. It starts to give off this nether portal texture and some purple particles from the top, and now anytime I die, I'll be transported back to this place in the Nether. Once those charges deplete, you will no longer respawn here. You'll return to your spawn point in the Overworld, which is presumably the very central spawn point of your world rather than the last bed you slept in, and you should come back to this point and refill it with glowstone, top it up again if you want to continue respawning here. So probably a good idea to keep a healthy supply of glowstone nearby if you want to respawn here on a regular basis. The crafting recipe for this thing is also fairly simple. It's just 3 crying obsidian across the top and bottom for a total of 6, 3 glowstone across the middle, and you get yourself a respawn anchor. So those are quite straightforward to craft, although crying obsidian can only be obtained through bartering with pigmen. So you're going to have to do a little bit of work in order to get hold of enough of this stuff to get yourself a respawn anchor in the first place. Speaking of those piglin trades, a new one was recently added, and it's an enchanted book, one that you can only get through bartering with piglins. I'm going to pull one out of the creative inventory so you can take a quick look at it. It is the Soul Speed enchantment, and I haven't been able to trade with one of these guys enough to find out whether you just get Soul Speed 1 and you have to upgrade it to Soul Speed 3, but it does seem to come in 3 separate tiers, and the application of this enchantment is actually really interesting. So we're going to apply it to some netherite boots here just so we can test it out. What the Soul Speed enchantment does is give you a faster running speed when you are on Soul Sand or Soul Soil. Normally, Soul Sand, at the very least, will slow the player down, but Soul Speed allows you to circumvent that and even travel faster than you would at a normal sprint. In sprinting with Soul Speed is even faster, meaning that you can traverse these biomes with relative ease, give or take the ghasts that are floating around the landscape. Here it is again in first person, and you can tell by the field of view and quite how fast we are traveling that this is not your normal pace. And in the 20W11A snapshot, it was even possible to stack these with Depth Strider to get an effect that let you move at a ludicrous pace. Unfortunately, as far as I can tell in 20W12A, that has now been patched, so there is an upper limit to how fast you can travel on foot. But in the meantime, it's pretty cool just to be able to get around, especially on Soul Sand, and not really feel the difference. One thing I have noticed though is that as soon as you leave the Soul Sand or Soul Soil blocks and end up on a different surface, you slow right back down again, but the effect picks up as soon as you get back onto Soul Sand and you accelerate to top speed again. As you run around, you will also notice there are a few blue particles, these kind of souls escaping behind you. It even says Soul Escapes there in the subtitles, and that is also a sign of the durability on these boots decreasing. You will want Unbreaking and Mending on these things, because every time the soul speed effect gets used, every time you are running around on these things at lightning pace, you will end up decreasing the durability on the boots as you go. So it's kind of like a ground-based version of flying with elytra, I guess. The more you use it, the faster the durability is going to run out. Heading back over here to my favorite brand new biome, the Warped Forest, there are some brand new pieces of vegetation popping up here and there. Kind of as an answer to the weeping vines that you will find in Crimson biomes, these are twisted vines, the inhabitants of the Warped Forest biome, or twisting vines rather than twisted vines, I guess. These are kind of like kelp in that they will grow up from the ground instead of hanging down from trees like they do in the Crimson biomes. You can add to the top of them like so in order to grow them a little bit higher, or in this most recent snapshot, they can all be bone mealed, and that ability has been added to kelp and weeping vines as well, meaning you can bone meal them to grow them a little bit longer. And these things are basically like a magic rope that you can grow up from the ground. Let me grab some bone meal here and show you that it actually grows in multiple stages like that, meaning that you can establish a quick route up to the ceiling very quickly, and like the weeping vines, they can be climbed. This is not me flying. If I was flying, I'd be moving a little bit faster. You can actually catch yourself on these and come back down from them like you could with vines on jungle trees in the overworld. They are actually kind of like a climbable rope now, and you don't need to just plant them on the Nylium either. You can plant them on any block you choose. You can even put them on the soul sand over here now as well, because soul sand has had a couple of adjustments made to it to make sure that stuff like powered rail and other things that require a full block underneath them can still be placed on them, despite the fact the player sinks into soul sand a little bit when you walk around. But these twisting vines could make a really neat way of traversing the overworld. If you wanted to get up and down from height super quickly, you could very easily do that with a decent amount of twisting vine gathered from the nether and a decent amount of bone meal as well. Now, in a previous snapshot video, I was a little bit concerned about not being able to get warped fungi and crimson fungi renewably now, and I'm happy to say that being able to bone meal Nylium now, you can actually grow some of the foliage that you'll find in these biomes. Not just the roots that you'll find growing up from the carpet of Nylium around us, but eventually, once we bone meal a few more, there we go, we can easily find ourselves one of the fungi, which grows once again with bone meal, making these stem blocks renewable again, which is great because these are the way you're going to survive in the nether. The fact that you can turn them into wood planks and use those to make crafting tables and sticks and all of the stuff you need to survive, it's going to be essential that you get hold of a lot of this stuff, and people don't always want to completely deforest these areas. So being able to renew those is a very nice change, and will also mean you can take them out to the overworld as much as you want. Now, as we have explored the nether, you may have seen a couple of interesting new blocks poking out from the walls here and there. This looks like some sort of amber, but it is in fact Nether Gold Ore, and I'll go into survival mode very briefly here as long as I can get myself into a safe spot to show you what happens when Nether Gold Ore is mined. Let me dig into the wall over here just so I'm not going to get shot by the ghasts. When I put myself in survival mode, I'll put a torch or something on the wall to light the place up a little bit better. There we go, and now we can have some face-to-face time with this gold ore. So I'll put myself in survival mode, mine it with a diamond pickaxe, and what you get, instead of an ore block like you would get in the overworld, is a small amount of gold nuggets. So instead of something that you need to smelt, it is something that you get a small amount of raw gold from. I think this is a fantastic addition to the nether. It makes gold a little bit more accessible if you want to live here permanently, and it also goes some way to explaining how come piglins and zombie pigmen have so much gold on them in the first place. It's not necessarily that they've got it from the overworld, it's that they've managed to acquire it through mining out here. And although it's not present in world generation as far as we can tell right now, there is a brand new basalt block that has been added to the game, polished basalt, which showed up first in the Bedrock Edition beta and has now made its way to Java Edition in Snapshot 20W12A. This looks ever so slightly different to the regular basalt texture from the side. You'll notice these streaks there are a little bit more polished and smooth. It's slightly lighter in the middle there, although it still has that kind of like darker edge texture along the sides there, and the end texture is very different, looking a little bit more like a quartz pillar. I'll get one of those out for the sake of comparison here. Should find them around here. Yes, there we go. Yeah, it looks kind of similar to a pillar of quartz, except this time with that weathered look. I feel like it's going to be really great for creating a kind of run-down temple vibe, or at least adding some really nice decoration to the corners of your nether portal. And if you want to know how to get hold of polished basalt, it's nice and simple really. All you need to do is get hold of regular basalt and start smelting it in a furnace. The product will be the polished basalt variant that you now see over here, although it's also important to point out that it does not end up getting smelted in a blast furnace. If I grab some more basalt from over here, I can't put it into the blast furnace by shift clicking, which probably means it's not going to be smeltable in a blast furnace at all. Gonna get back into survival mode for this next demonstration because in addition to the nether wart block and the warped wart block, which we covered in the last snapshot, hose are now the preferred tool for a variety of other materials, including hay bales, target blocks, dried kelp blocks, and shroom lights, in addition to sponges and wet sponges. Now, if you place a wet sponge down in the nether, it immediately converts into a dry sponge, but after that, they can be broken nice and quickly with a hoe, which is really, really useful. Actually adds a lot of functionality to the hoe, although using it for all of this stuff is going to make the serious dedication advancement a little bit easier. But I think it's super nice that we get a tool that can break these things a little bit faster. It certainly makes sense that hoes are the sensible thing to use on hay bales, and some of the other blocks like sponges, especially if you're trying to clear them up in a hurry, we can really use something that's going to break those a little bit faster. Not to mention there was no decent tool to mine these nether wart blocks originally. They always used to take a while to mine, so I think that's a really great change. Now, I want to run a quick test to see if this respawn obelisk will let you respawn in places other than the nether. So what I need to do is charge this up with some glowstone like so, and then right-click on it, and wow, okay, I was not expecting that, but that is, to be honest, kind of the reaction that we should expect, because that is the reverse of beds. Beds in the nether will explode like this while they will reset your spawn point in the overworld, so it makes sense that the reverse is true here as well, but wow, that actually shook me up. I didn't know that happened. The other test I want to do, of course, is find out whether or not it will reset your spawn point in the end, where the beds will also explode, and yep, it turns out that the respawn obelisks do as well. So these things are only intended to reset your spawn point in the nether, which does make sense in a way, because if you reset your spawn point in the end, where would you go when you went through the end return portal? That's my main conundrum about this whole thing has just been answered. You cannot use these things to set a spawn point in the end. It is only in the nether that they work. It's also worth noting that when I came back from the end portal, the message here says you have no home bed or respawn anchor, or it was obstructed. So respawn anchors are now included in the message that lets you know your respawn point could not be found, which makes sense because it just tried to blow me up. However, if I end up setting one of these things up here in the nether, I'm nice and close to my nether portal. If I want to make my way home quickly, I can right-click on this. It will tell you the respawn point is set, and it even has a special sound effect that tells you that. Now, if I fly a little further away, and I'm just going to run a quick command to respawn at that location, I hit respawn, and there I am. And you'll notice that a quarter of this moon shape is now disappearing from this, meaning I will have to fill it up with a little bit more glowstone if I want to make sure I can respawn here more permanently. So let's grab some glowstone out of the blocks menu here, add that, and it fills up again nicely. It also completely lights up the area around it, which is kind of useful because you probably don't want stuff spawning right next to your spawn point. Naturally, if I set one up in a different location, charge that, and then right-click on it, my respawn point will be set there, and I'll end up there, but you can leave these things around, and it does not cost anything to set your spawn point in a different place. That hasn't removed a charge from this one over here, so you could set up a network of these and just right-click on one of them if you want to respawn at that point in the nether later on. Furthermore, as the message in the chat now suggests, if we go back through the end return portal once we've set our spawn in the nether, it does actually respawn us next to this obelisk. And I did just test that twice, so don't worry, it doesn't take 2 charges to come back from the end, it should only take 1. But that is still a charge of the respawn obelisk used up when you return from the end. So bear in mind, it's not always death that removes a charge from that, it's respawning there under any circumstances. Now, one last thing I want to cover in this video, and this is going to be a slightly more controversial thing for folks who are fans of technical Minecraft, is some changes which make AFK fishing impossible and zero-tick growth farms impossible. Now, I've set up a couple of things here that are going to be a quick demonstration that zero-ticking behavior has not been removed from pistons entirely. For example, if I start placing blocks down in front of this setup, the blocks here are being zero-ticked along by those pistons, which is still happening. It's really good that this is still in the game. A very smart move on Mojang's part to not just remove this behavior from pistons entirely, because mechanics like this are still used for things like automatic concrete converters and stuff like that, which can convert large amounts of concrete powder, allowing the players to build bigger and better things. And this sort of technology is really not a problem in that case, because it's not super exploitative. There still happens to be a lot of effort that goes into building a contraption that can convert concrete that way and allow it to be shuttled around a system nice and quickly, blown up with TNT, and so on and so forth. However, the changes that they really want to make are to exploitative things like zero-ticking crop growth, and that is what has been fixed here. It's not the behavior of the pistons themselves, because as you can see when I pull this lever, the blocks can still be zero-ticked around much like they were before, but this will no longer cause crops to grow. What this used to do, in fact still does in Minecraft 1.15.2, the current release version of Minecraft, is force a block update to whatever crop is here and basically force it to grow one stage. This is not the most technical explanation. I'm not the most technically gifted person when it comes to this game, but that is my understanding of how this mechanic worked. It was basically a bug, a kind of incidental effect of blocks getting moved around underneath here. It was trying to decide whether or not it should break the block here, and instead it was being forced to update the block one growth stage, which on the one hand was really good for technical players being able to exploit things like this to get large amounts of material like bamboo, but it's really not the intended effect, and in some cases can be game breaking. It didn't really make sense for the balance of the game for players to spend the time and resources and energy building a much larger farm for a similar output to something that you could fit within a footprint of like a 3x5 block area, and so they have made the, I think, correct decision of patching this bug entirely. It basically means that you get the reward back for putting more effort in, and that's something that I feel is kind of at the core of the whole Minecraft experience. You put a lot of effort in if you want big results. You don't get to bypass them with cheap stuff like this, and that kind of brings us back to fishing, because fishing in open water will still yield you a bunch of really cool things. You'll still get loads of treasure. You'll be able to get stuff through luck of the sea and lure like you normally could. However, exploitative things like AFK fish farms are now patched, and that has been done by checking whether the bobber, this bit at the end of the fishing line here, is adjacent to anything which is a non-full block, for example, something that has been waterlogged, like a fence or anything like that, and it checks for blocks above the area where the bobber is, so it will check for anything that is preventing the bobber from returning to the player, and trapdoors and tripwires and all of the other stuff that players have been using to bypass these mechanics with AFK fish farms are now going to affect the bobber and mean that it pulls from a different loot table, meaning that you only get small amounts of stuff like fish, and you don't get a lot of the treasure items that people AFK fish for. Things like enchanted books, better bows, better fishing rods, all of that kind of stuff is no longer going to be accessible through AFK fishing. But if you want to go out and do some manual fishing somewhere, you are more than welcome to. And that, I think, is a really nice piece of balancing. While I imagine a lot of people will be understandably upset that they can no longer fish for all of this cool stuff while they are AFK, it also means people spend more time putting time into the mechanics that provide that stuff for you, but are also really rewarding. Things like villager trading and stuff like that. Now, I will also point out that on the Minecraft Reddit, Sliced Lime, who is one of the developers of the game and a YouTuber in his own right, actually has some interesting thoughts about the development philosophy, going into exactly why they have ended up nerfing these kinds of mechanics and these farms that everybody is kind of used to being part of the game at this point. And it is, as I said, all in the name of balance, making sure that the appropriate reward is given for the amount of effort players put in. So if you want to go and read more of his comments on the subject, you can do. I think personally that it is a good philosophy to have with the game going forward, and hopefully people don't find it too much of a shift. And if you do, maybe consider installing a data pack or changing loot tables so that all of that stuff can be added back in. They want to keep the customizable element of Minecraft alive, and so it is still going to be possible to alter that stuff yourself if you really feel like this is a mechanic you wanted to exploit. And that's going to be it for this little snapshot video. I do hope you guys have enjoyed this look at the features coming to the Nether update in Minecraft Snapshots 20W11A and 12A. Don't forget to leave a like on this episode if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye for now.